everybody, it's Dr. Stone. I apologize for not being able to do an in-person Zoom meeting tonight, but I'm not feeling well, been exposed to COVID, so I'm not sure if that's it. But I wanted to go ahead and go over some of the things that I think are important for the upcoming assignments. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, there we go. Okay, and so we went over last week, we went over week 2 assignments, and I think we went over them pretty thoroughly. If you have any questions about those, please feel free to shoot me an email, text me. I can talk to you on the phone if you'll just text me first so that I know that you're calling, because it'll be an unknown number. So I thought I would go ahead, since we won't meet again till next Thursday, and go over the assignments for next week. I hope that that's not going to be confusing for you. So let's get started. Let's see, slideshow from the beginning. Okay. And again, I apologize for my voice sounding raspy, a really bad sore throat. I'm not sure what that's about. So the first assignment that I wanted to go over was the children's books, bias and equity analysis. Okay, so if you look in the assignments for, excuse me, if you look in the assignments for week 3, there are 2 articles that are linked, and you will need to read those first. This assignment is all about looking at the children's literature that you have and deciding whether it serves your population of children. And basically every population of children, no matter what the racial or ethnic makeup of them, needs to see diverse characters within their within the books that you read to them. So what you will do is first you will read the 2 articles linked in session 3, and then you are going to choose a total of 4 children's books that contain supportive diversity, anti-bias, and or equity content. Now you can use a library, public library, you can use your own personal library, or you can use the teacher who you're doing your field experience with. You can look at her library. If she doesn't have a good library, maybe ask her to recommend somebody that does. And you're going to choose 2 fiction books and 2 nonfiction books that show diversity, that aren't biased against any one ethnicity or kind of person, and that show equity. It's best to choose our fiction books with people in them, just because if, like, let's say you do Cat in the Hat, there's really not a whole lot there to really look at, because it's a cartoon, it's make-believe. And for this assignment, you're going to be wanting to look and see if the children in the book, the people in the book, the traditions, the customs, the language in the book is representative of a diverse population. So, so you can choose book with people as your best option, or if you can find a really good book that has animals in it, maybe one that talks about how some animal, maybe it's a story about animals where one of them is different, that would be okay too. But if it doesn't have people in it, make sure that the topic of equity is addressed. Again, 2 should be fiction and 2 should be nonfiction. So after you have chosen these books and you have looked at them, you're going to write a paper. You should write at least a paragraph that is an introduction. Maybe you want to discuss why you think it's very important for books to represent or be interesting to the children in your classroom. Maybe you want to talk about how literature speaks to all of us. And in order for it to do that, it needs to be representative of the world that we live in. However you want to do that, that's fine. So you'll have your introduction, and then you'll have one paragraph per book. And right here, I have listed what should be in each paragraph. Should have a short summary. One sentence will suffice. You don't have to go into everything that happens, but just one summary, a one sentence summary, 2, 3 if you need it. Why you think the teacher chose that book to be in her classroom library? Would you choose it? Why or why not? And does that book contain examples of stereotyping or tokenism? Now, I think you'll learn in the reading that stereotyping means assigning actions or language or clothing to a certain racial or ethnic group. And then tokenism is if there is, say, a book that has all white children, and then there is usually one Black child in the class, and maybe the Black child is the child that gets in trouble. So are there any examples of stereotyping or tokenism in the book? So you do that for each one of your books. So you'll have your introductory paragraph. You'll have 4 analysis paragraphs, and then you will have a concluding summary. This can be 1 paragraph, it can be 2, it's totally up to you, whatever you want to say, but you need to include these 3 things. What did you learn about classroom libraries, bias, and equity? Was it difficult to find books that reflected diversity or that would be interesting to diverse learners? And how has this activity changed how you would build your own classroom library? Now, maybe it hasn't. Maybe you already built your library or have dreams of building your library with this in mind. But then tell me that. But if it has changed the way you think, then tell me that as well. And then the last thing that will be in your paper will be your reference page. Okay, now this paper, does not have to be written completely in APA format, but you need to make sure that a few things are done. Okay, since you are going to have a reference page, you'll need to have citations. So let's look at a few of the mistakes that people usually make if they're not real familiar with APA. So number 1, within the body of your paper, book titles are written in title case and italicized. Now, what title case means is that all important words or words over 3 letters are written in capital letters, with capital letters. And italicized, of course, you know what that means. But whenever you write a book title, this is how you write it. And there's the example of Cat in the Hat. So that's within the body of your paper, within your paragraphs. Okay, when you're talking about the book in the body of your paper, include the author and date in parentheses after the titles. For example, The Cat in the Hat, and it says Seuss, 1973, because it's written by Dr. Seuss. That's his last name, and the copy I have was published in 1973. So example, The Cat in the Hat, and look, I made a mistake there myself. I did not italicize The Cat in the Hat. This is a what not to do. I apologize for that. So The Cat in the Hat is a book about a fictional cat that comes to visit some bored children and wreaks havoc on their home. Now, that would be an example of how you would cite within the body of your paper. It also would be an example of how you could summarize a book in 1 sentence. And again, please be aware, this should be italicized. I just caught that right now. My apologies. I will go back and fix that. Now, for the reference page, so number 1 and number 2 talked about how to write the title of your book and how to cite the cite your books within your paper. Now, number 3 talks about the reference page. You center and bold the word references at the top of the page. You alphabetize your reference page by author's last name, and you use this format: author's last name, author's first initial, then a period, date of publication in parentheses, and then a period, and then title of the book in italicized sentence case. Okay, so again, the title of the book is italicized like it always should be, but this is in sentence case, which means the first letter of the title is capitalized, like the first word of a sentence, but then everything else is written in lowercase. After the book name, it's a period, and then we have the publisher's name and a period. You will notice that this is indented a little bit. This is called a hanging indent. So let's look at some examples. Okay, so let's say I was sharing Dr. Seuss was, and I'm writing the reference for it, Seuss. And because Dr. Seuss is a pen name and is not his real name, and it doesn't tell us the first name of his pen name, we don't have to have a first initial. But I have Seuss and then a period, then 1973, period. The Cat in the Hat, that is written in sentence case, Random House. Okay, here's another example. Hoffman, comma, M. It's written by Mary Hoffman, and so the M is for Mary. The date it was published, the name of the book, Amazing Grace. Now you might be saying, Dr. Stone, you told us that sentence case, just the first word of the title is capitalized, and you're correct. The only thing that's different is if it's a proper noun anyways, you still keep it with capital letters, okay? And then last, Finding Winnie, and that's the title. And then the subtitle also will start with a capital letter, The True Story of the World's Most Famous Bear. And then our publisher, Little Brown Books for Readers. And you notice again, this hanging indent, okay? Okay, so I'm going to skip over to the reading lessons for session 4 because it really relates to the bias and equity analysis. Okay, now it's listed under under week 3 because it is 2 lesson plans, and so they want to give you time to get them to go ahead and get a head start. So using these books that you have just reviewed in the bias and equity analysis, you're going to create 2 reading lesson plans. They can be related, like the first part of a reading lesson plan and a second part of the reading lesson plan, or they can be on totally different skills taught on totally different days. But they need to be focused around one of the 5 pillars of learning how to read: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, or comprehension. Make sure that you include the ways to meet the needs of all students. Differentiation. This should be related to reading and not behavior. I know a lot of people, when they have student adjustments, will say, Johnny has a hard time paying attention, so I would seat him next to me. Okay, that is a behavior strategy for differentiation. How could you differentiate the content or the way you present it of the reading, the actual reading? Okay, so that is due in 2 weeks in lesson 4. Session 3, though, you have 1 lesson plan due. It's the guided reading lesson plan. There is an article about guided reading that is linked in the session 3 assignment. I don't know how much you have really been exposed to guided reading. So if you are not If you're not real familiar with it, I have included 4 good videos. Some of them are for younger kids, other ones are for older kids, of teachers that showing you how to do a guided reading lesson. Okay. This reading lesson cannot be used again as one of the 2 we just talked about. This is independent of those 2 lessons that are due next week. And you must include differentiation with student adjustments. So the typical guided reading format is the first thing you do is a book introduction. For little kids, this is going to be a picture walk. You have your small group at your table with you. You open up the book and you cover up the words and you ask the students, what do you think is happening in this picture? You ask them sort of to tell the story as you go through the book without reading. You're building background. You go through and introduce any new vocabulary to them so that when they get to that word in the book, they will have an easier time figuring out what it is. Then after you've done the picture walk, after you've introduced the new vocabulary, you're going to give each student at your table with you their book, and it's the same book. And each student is going to read quietly, like in a whisper voice to themselves, all at the same time. This is not round robin reading. So everybody is reading the same book at the same time, quietly in a whisper voice to themselves. You as the teacher, you are going and you are listening to each of the readers to see how they are doing. What mistakes are they making? Are they using their reading strategies? Guiding them on how to figure out unknown words. Once you're done with all of that, then you discuss what they read. This is where your comprehension comes in. Or if you wanted to, then you could do a round robin reading after everybody has had a chance to read it themselves. And then sometimes teachers will want to do a follow-up activity, maybe have them write a sentence about what happened in the book, or have them draw a picture of their favorite part. But the most important thing about guided reading is you are guiding them through the process while each one reads by themselves. This way, in round robin reading, a child cannot be paying attention until it is his or her turn to read. Or if you're just popcorn calling on people to read, they might not be paying attention. But this way, everybody in your small group is reading at the same time, and you are just listening to each of them read. If you're doing this with older children, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, this could be done as a class because most of the time, by this time, they've gotten their reading skills. And then you could introduce the book, talk about some of the concepts in the book, maybe talk about some of the features in the book, show some pictures, introduce the new vocabulary, set your purpose for reading, and then have everybody reading silently or reading quietly in a whisper voice at their desk. And then instead of you sitting at a table, you're walking around and you're listening to them read. You're watching them read. You're looking and listening at their reading behaviors. And then you have your discussion. This is a way to make sure that everybody is reading the material. Okay. And that was, those were your assignments that are coming up. Remember that this week, you had the assignments that we talked about last week. And then for the coming week that you'll be working on the next time we meet, you have your bias and equity analysis paper due. You have your 1 guided reading lesson plan, and you have your discussion board. And then you can get started on your 2 reading plans if you want to. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, shoot me an email. If I don't answer within a reasonable amount of time, or you really, really need an answer right now, just send me a text. Just tell me who you are, what class you're in, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Again, my apologies for not being able to do this in person and being able to answer your questions. It's just sort of late my time when and I just am not feeling well. I hope you'll understand, and I hope to be back to normal later. So have a good week. Let me know if you have any questions.